Michael was only 9 years old, but his eyes carried the exhaustion of someone who had already lived a lifetime of pain. It was December 23rd, and St. Hope Children's Hospital in Manhattan was decorated with colorful lights, shiny garlands, and a giant Christmas tree in the recreation room. The nurses wore Santa hats. The doctors handed out candy canes. Everything seemed magical, but Michael hated every second of it. Santa Claus doesn't exist, he shouted at a group of younger children decorating paper ornaments. It's all a lie. You're here, sick, dying, and you're making letters to a fat old man who doesn't even exist. The children started crying. A 5-year-old girl dropped the ornament she was holding, her lip trembling. But Mommy said if I wish hard enough he'll cure me. Your mom lied. Michael spat the words like poison. Nobody's going to cure us. Nobody cares. It's just theater, so you don't realize we're trapped here waiting to die. Michael! His mother's voice cut through the air like a whip. Dr. Sarah Mitchell was 35 years old but looked 50. Deep dark circles marked her face. Her hands trembled from exhaustion. She was a physician at that very hospital, working double shifts, sometimes triple, desperately trying to save money for a treatment she could never afford. Son, please. These children still have hope. Michael turned to her, and what she saw in her son's eyes destroyed her inside. There was no anger there. There was something worse. Resignation. Acceptance of death. Hope is for people who still believe in lies, Mom. I stopped believing. He limped out of the room, dragging his stand, leaving a trail of painful silence behind. Sarah stood there frozen, tears finally defeating her determination to be strong. The head nurse, Margaret, a 60-year-old woman who had worked there for 30 years, gently touched her shoulder. Dr. Mitchell, you need to rest. You've been on your feet for 40 hours. I can't. I need the extra money from the shifts. Sarah quickly wiped her eyes, composing herself. The disease is progressing faster. The doctor said he has maybe 6 months. Margaret hugged her friend. God will provide. Margaret, I'm a doctor. I know God doesn't cure Hayworth syndrome. Science cures it. And science costs $3 million I'll never have. She didn't know her prayers were about to be answered in the most unexpected way possible. Alexander Harrison sat alone in his office on the top floor of Manhattan's tallest skyscraper. The view was spectacular. Christmas lights twinkled across the city below, but he saw none of it. His eyes were fixed on the photograph on his desk. A 7-year-old girl with dark hair and bright green eyes full of life despite the tubes, despite the medical equipment surrounding her. Emily Grace Harrison, his daughter, dead 5 years ago that same month from Hayworth syndrome. Daddy? Her voice echoed in his memory. You always told me Santa Claus is real for those who believe. So, can you be Santa Claus for other children when I'm gone? Promise. He had promised. With tears streaming down his face, holding her fragile hand, he had promised. And now, 5 years later, for $100 million spent on research, he finally had what he needed to keep that promise. The intercom buzzed. Mr. Harrison, Dr. Chun is here. Send her in. Dr. Linda Chun entered carrying an aluminum briefcase. She was 62, head of research at Harrison's pharmaceutical company, and her eyes shone with the intensity of someone who had just discovered fire. Alexander, we did it. It works. 100% efficacy in final trials. Alexander stood up so fast he knocked over his chair. You're sure? Absolutely sure. The last primate trials were completed yesterday. Complete reversal of cellular deterioration. Regeneration in some cases. It's revolutionary. Alexander felt his legs weaken. 5 years. 5 years of tireless work. And now, when can we start human trials? Dr. Chen's smile disappeared. That's the problem. The FDA will take at least 2 years for approval. Even with all your political influence and money, the laws are clear. 2 years. Alexander slammed his fist on the desk. How many children will die in 2 years? According to our survey, there are currently 17 children diagnosed with Hayworth in the United States. Most don't have 2 years to live. 17. 17 Emilus. 17 parents holding their children's hands, hearing promises they wanted to make but didn't know if they could keep. What if I bypassed the legal procedures? Dr. Chun stared at him. You'd lose everything. The company, your license, probably your freedom. It would be experimental, illegal. You'd go to prison. Alexander looked at Emily's photo. Daddy, be Santa Claus. Her voice whispered in his memory. Prepare the treatment, he said firmly. All 17 children. We'll go to them. Alexander. It's Christmas Eve, Linda. What better time for Santa Claus to appear? Dr. Chun held the briefcase tighter. You know this could cost your entire life, right? Everything you've built. Alexander picked up Emily's photo, gently running his fingers over the glass. Some promises are worth any price. Prepare everything. Tomorrow night, we start at St. Hope Children's Hospital. Christmas Eve. Sarah was finishing her shift when she found the envelope in her locker. No return address. Just her name in elegant handwriting. Dr. Sarah Mitchell. She opened it with trembling hands. Dr. Mitchell, I heard about Michael's condition. I also heard he's been telling children that Santa Claus doesn't exist. Tonight at 8 p.m., I'll be there with something that can change everything. It's not magic. It's science. But for your son, it might be the same thing. A friend from the North Pole. Sarah read it 3 times, then crumpled the paper and threw it in the trash. It was cruel. Some kind of sick joke. Who would do this to a desperate mother? But that night, she couldn't sleep. And the next morning, she fished the letter out of the hospital trash. Just in case, she murmured to herself. Just in case. December 24th dragged like molasses. Michael was worse. He could barely sit up now. The pain was constant, relentless. The doctors had increased his morphine, but that only made him drowsy and distant. Sarah sat beside his bed, holding his small, cold hand. Mom, Michael whispered, barely opening his eyes. You still here? I'll always be here, son. Even when I die? The question pierced Sarah like a knife. You're not going to die. Michael smiled weakly. It's okay, Mom. I'm not scared anymore. I'm just tired. Sarah squeezed his hand. Just a little longer, sweetheart. Hold on just a little longer. At 7:45 p.m., she found herself watching the clock. Then the door. Then the clock again. This is ridiculous, she told herself. You're a scientist. You don't believe in. 7:55 p.m. She was in the waiting room now, watching the hospital entrance. Families arrived for visits. Children laughed. The world kept spinning. 8 p.m. Nothing. Sarah let out a bitter laugh. Of course nothing. She was an idiot for believing, even for a second. The automatic doors opened, and Santa Claus walked into the hospital. But this wasn't an ordinary Santa. He was impeccable. The suit was genuine red velvet, not cheap polyester. The beard looked real, and he carried not a sack of presents, but an aluminum briefcase with medical symbols engraved on it. Behind him came 2 suited security guards and a woman in a white lab coat. Dr. Sarah Mitchell? Santa said, and his voice was young, firm, full of authority. Sarah stood up in slow motion. Who are you? The man smiled and removed the fake beard. He was in his mid-40s, strong jaw, intense green eyes. Sarah recognized him immediately. His face was on magazine covers, news programs, billionaire panels. My name is Alexander Harrison, and I've come to bring the impossible. The conference room was tense. Alexander, Sarah, Dr. Chan, and the hospital director, Dr. Patricia Williams, sat around the table covered with documents, graphs, and medical images. This is insanity, Dr. Williams was saying, her voice rising. An unapproved treatment? Experimental? You're asking me to administer this to children? I'd lose my license. The hospital would be shut down. I assume all legal responsibility, Alexander responded calmly, pushing a document across the table. My lawyers prepared this. You, the hospital, all staff involved are completely indemnified. It's not about lawsuits. Patricia slammed her hand on the table. It's about ethics. It's about doing what's right. And what is right? Alexander asked. Let 17 children die because we follow rules? Or save those lives and face the consequences later? With all due respect, Sarah interrupted, her voice trembling but firm. I'm the mother in question. I'm a physician, and I'd like to see the data before anyone decides my son's future. Dr. Chun opened her tablet. Dr. Mitchell, here are 5 years of research. 50 primates tested. 100% success rate. The mechanism uses modified CRISPR gene therapy to... She explained for 15 minutes. Sarah followed every word, every graph, every image. She asked technical questions, challenged methodologies, examined results. It was brilliant. It was real. It was possible. Why? Sarah finally asked, looking at Alexander. Why do this? You don't know me. Never knew Michael. Why risk everything? Alexander was silent. Then slowly he pulled a photo from his pocket. A girl with dark hair and green eyes, smiling despite the tubes, despite the visible suffering. Emily Grace, my daughter, died 5 years ago. Hayworth syndrome. I had all the money in the world, but I didn't have the cure. His voice broke. On her last night, she was delirious with fever. She held my hand and said, Daddy, you always told me Santa Claus is real for those who believe. So be Santa Claus for other children when I'm gone. Promise. I promised. He looked Sarah in the eyes. I spent 5 years and $400 million developing the cure I couldn't give her. And I won't let bureaucracy prevent other children from having what Emily didn't have. Sarah covered her face with her hands, sobbing. She asked you to be Santa Claus. Yes. And tonight, Christmas Eve, I can finally keep that promise. Dr. Williams cleared her throat. She was crying too. There are still risks, enormous ones. But, she looked at Emily's photo, then at Sarah. God forgive me if I'm wrong. Where do I sign? Michael was half asleep when he heard voices in the hallway. No, Mom. I told you. I don't want visitors. But she came in anyway, and there was a man with her. Not a costumed Santa. Just a man in an expensive suit who looked at Michael as if he knew him deeply. Michael, the man said, sitting in the chair beside the bed. My name is Alexander. And you're absolutely right. Santa Claus, the old man with the sleigh and reindeer, doesn't exist. That's a story. Michael frowned. Then why are you here? Because there's another kind of Santa Claus. The real kind. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Your mother is one, works day and night for you. The nurses who bring extra blankets. The doctors who don't give up. These people are the real Santa Claus. Cool, Michael said sarcastically. But they can't cure me. Alexander opened the briefcase. Inside was a syringe with glowing blue liquid. What if I told you I can? Michael looked at his mother. She was crying but smiling. A combination he hadn't seen in months. Is this a joke? No, Michael. This is science. 5 years of research. For $100 million. And it can save your life. Why should I believe you? Alexander showed Emily's photo. Because I had a daughter. She had the same disease as you. And she died because I didn't find the cure in time. But she made me promise I'd save others. And that's what I'm doing. Michael looked at the photo for a long time. At the girl who could have been his friend. She looks nice, he whispered. She was. Funny, smart, brave. Like you. I'm not brave. You wake up every day in pain and keep living. That's the definition of courage, kid. Michael closed his eyes. Tears escaped from the corners. I'm so scared. Scared to believe and be wrong again. Alexander placed his hand on the boy's shoulder. You know what Emily told me? That being scared and having hope can exist at the same time. You don't have to stop being afraid to believe. Michael opened his eyes. And for the first time in a long while, he made a choice. Okay, you can try. The injection was quick. A needle, blue liquid entering the vein, and then waiting. But Alexander didn't leave. He stayed, telling stories about Emily. How she loved drawing dogs, even though she never had one. How she laughed at bad jokes. How she fought until her last breath, always brave. I wish I'd known her, Michael said, his voice stronger. She would have loved you. I'm sure of it. Mr. Harrison? A nurse appeared. The other children heard that. Well, that Santa Claus is here. They'd like to see you. Alexander looked at Michael. Do you mind? Michael smiled. Small, but real. Go. They deserve it too. Alexander spent the next hour visiting each of the 17 children with Hayworth in the hospital. Each received the injection. Each heard about Emily. Each was given hope wrapped in science. A 6-year-old girl named Sophie held his hand. Why do you care about us? Because someone very special asked me to. And because you deserve it. Every child deserves to believe in miracles. When he returned to Michael's room, it was past midnight. Christmas had officially arrived. How are you feeling? Alexander asked. Michael considered. Different. Still hurts, but less. It's weird. That's good. It means it's working. Mr. Harrison? Michael hesitated. Do you still think Santa Claus doesn't exist? Oh, he exists. He's just not who we think he is. He's every person who chooses to make a difference. Every person who keeps promises. Every person who doesn't give up. Michael smiled. Then you're a Santa Claus. No, your mother is. I just have money. She has love. And love is worth more. Sarah, at the door, couldn't hold back anymore. She walked in and hugged Alexander, sobbing. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know how. You don't need to. Just let him live when he gets better. Let him be a child again. That's what Emily would have wanted. Michael woke when sunlight streamed through the window. It took a few seconds to realize. It didn't hurt. The constant, piercing pain that had been his companion for months was gone. He sat up in bed, then stood, without help, without dizziness. "M.O.M." he shouted, his voice strong and clear. "M.O.M." Sarah ran in, followed by nurses. "Michael? What's wrong?" "It doesn't hurt." "Mom, it doesn't hurt anymore." Tests came quickly. Normal blood pressure, normal temperature, and the disease markers, which had been at critical levels, had dropped dramatically. Dr. Chun arrived an hour later to check all the patients. Results were consistent. Everyone improving. Some dramatically. "It's too early to be certain," she said cautiously. "But I've never seen anything like this." Alexander arrived at noon, carrying real presents this time. Toys, books, tablets. But the best gift had already been given. Michael saw him and ran to him, something impossible the day before. "Mr. Harrison, look, I can walk. I can run." Alexander caught him in a tight embrace. "I know, kid. I know. I made something for you." Michael showed him a paper. A simple drawing, 2 children holding hands. "Emily and Michael. Friends forever. Because she saved me. Is that okay?" Alexander couldn't speak. He just nodded, tears flowing freely. News spread. Journalists arrived. Cameras. Questions. Alexander faced it all, patiently explaining it wasn't a miracle. It was science. But for the 17 families, it was magic anyway. Alexander's office was different now. Where once there was only Emily's photo, now there were dozens. Michael playing soccer. Sophie at her birthday party. All 17 healthy and alive. The FDA had approved the treatment on an emergency basis. The company now produced it free of charge for all Hayworth cases worldwide. Did Alexander lose money? Yes, millions. Did he face lawsuits? Yes. Criticism? Plenty. But he didn't care at all. Because that afternoon, there was a party at St. Hope Children's Hospital. A celebration for all the treated children. And Michael was there, healthy, running, laughing too loud, living like every child should. "You did it," Sarah said beside him. "You kept your promise." "We did it," Alexander corrected. "You never gave up." Michael ran to them, breathless and happy. "Mr. Harrison, I'm trying out for the soccer team." "Amazing. And you know what else?" I told Emily's story at school. About how she saved me. They thought she was a hero. Because she is. right? Yes, Alexander whispered. She is. And so are you. Michael hugged him tight. Thank you for making me believe again. In Santa Claus. In miracles. In everything. As the sun set, Alexander looked up at the sky and whispered, I did it, Emily. I kept my promise. And I'll keep doing it. Forever. It was Christmas Eve again. St. Hope Children's Hospital was packed, but not with patients. With former patients. An annual reunion Alexander had organized. Over 100 children now. The treatment had spread worldwide. Each life saved was a promise kept. Michael, now 10 years old, stood on the makeshift stage in the recreation room. He held a microphone, nervous but determined. Hi everyone, he began. A year ago, I was in this room telling everyone that Santa Claus doesn't exist. I was wrong. He exists. He's just not who we think. He pointed to Alexander in the crowd. He exists in people like Mr. Harrison, who kept a promise to his daughter even when it hurt too much. He exists in mothers like mine who never give up. He exists in every person who chooses to make a difference. Michael pulled something from his pocket. The crumpled drawing from a year ago. Emily and him holding hands. This is Emily. She died before I met her. But she saved me anyway, because her love for other children didn't die with her. And I want you all to know, every one of us here is alive because of her. So, Merry Christmas, Emily, wherever you are. Thank you for being our angel. The room exploded in applause. Tears. Hugs. Alexander stood frozen, speechless with emotion, looking at all those children alive, healthy, happy. Sarah touched his shoulder. She'd be proud. I hope so. And in that moment, as 100 children who should have been dead sang Christmas carols, Alexander Harrison knew for certain. Santa Claus exists. He exists in every promise kept, every hope shared, every life saved by love. And he will always exist, as long as there are people who choose to believe in the impossible.